He was also obviously very concerned that he might be causing pain to me, which there really wasn't any. But at the beginning, I did feel some bone pain, and it was nothing compared to what Mike felt, but I think it was probably somewhat similar, and he could see that. So he took one look at me, and he eagerly said, "I know just the thing." And he guided me to the couch in front of the TV, gave me a blanket, and he seemed genuinely happy to be able to help me while I was not feeling well. So the transplant went well, and even though it went well, Mike would constantly remind me that the myeloma would come back. He was trying to prepare me and everyone else for the inevitable. So lots of times when I feel low about myself, maybe the impact of my science, I can thank Mike that I can always remember that for that one time, I was the special person for Mike, and it really was an amazing experience. Liz, I want to thank you so much for everything. I want to thank you mostly for being Mike's soulmate. You know, the other night, a couple of us got here early, and Liz and I went out to dinner with my niece, who you'll hear from in a second, Jeff's daughter, and my sister Joanne. All of us living thousands of miles apart from each other. And the dinner was chaotic. It was filled with love and conversation, and we must have jumped around every 30 seconds in the conversation. And it was wonderful. And I just want to say, Liz, I'm really, really happy to have you part of this crazy family. Finally, I just want to talk about the last few months without Mike, because they're very strange. When you live so far away, in many ways, your daily life just doesn't change. You go about with the ups and the downs, and then there's sort of a lull in the busyness of the day, and my mind always goes to Mike, where there's obviously this huge emotional pit. And interestingly, it's a pit full of incredible sadness, but also so much happiness and warmth. And so that memory is the part I want to remember, how much he made you feel good and how much he taught you. You know, as Jeff said, well, he didn't say this actually, you don't get to choose your siblings, right? But a sibling should be the longest relationship of your life, longer than your parents, longer than your partner, longer than your children. And I feel gypped. It was way too short, but I'm really glad that I got Mike.
Thank you very much, Susan. Thanks for it. Very moving, and loads of questions raising from that, not least of which were the cricketers that you had a crush on. Now, it would be entirely wrong not to have people from Mike's family that were of the younger generation as well, and so I hope you give the welcome they deserve to Hannah and Alex, Mike's nieces, please.
Hello, everyone. It's just me, actually. Thank you all as well. It's been incredible to hear everything you've had to say, what you will say today, and also all of the memories you've shared on Facebook, on the newspaper obituaries. I've learned things I never knew about him and realized what he meant to all of you and what he meant to us. In one of my first university classes, I was asked to write about a personal hero. I wrote about Mike. I never told him, because it seemed embarrassing for a 20-year-old to confess that to her uncle. But it was a natural choice. For as long as I can remember, I idolized and bragged about Mike. As a child, it was exotic to have an uncle who lived abroad, had an accent, wrote about a strange sport. As I got older, I still felt that way. He lived a life that I wanted. He was a writer, an activist, an intellectual. For many years, my dad took my brother Alex and me on trips to Europe with Mike and Liz. We would tour the Italian countryside, and they would teach us about art, religion, and food. In London, he would continue our education with John Ford and Luis Buñuel. What I loved about my Uncle Mike is how seamlessly he inhabited two worlds at once. The distinction between highbrow and lowbrow did not exist to him. That someone could be a true scholar, as my dad said, of William Blake and Deep Space Nine at the same time was a wonder to me. While deeply analytical, he could also be extremely silly, which made him a lot of fun to talk to as a kid. Liz and I were looking through old photos the other day, and we found one maybe from around 1999 or 2000, before he was sick. In the photo, my brother is about 13 and is sitting on a ledge with his back turned, completely unaware, as Mike pretends to push him off the ledge. I'm sitting on the side, about 10 years old, totally delighted by it all. Looking back, I realized that at any age, Mike related to me. Not as many adults talk to children, but as an equal. He could talk literature with me when I was reading Charlotte's Web, compare favorite Bob Marley songs when I was a teen, and challenge my politics and convictions as an adult. When I was 13, I began writing poetry. It was terrible stuff. But I could share it with Mike because I trusted him. He did me the honor of taking me and my writing seriously, sometimes even more so than I did myself. When I got older, I occasionally shared articles I'd written with him, and then, too, he treated me like an equal. He would encourage me, but never shy away from critiques of my ideas if he disagreed. Whenever I visited him in London, I left feeling inspired, like it was time to be more of an intellectual, to educate myself and stand up for my beliefs. He not only made me want to be a stronger writer, but a more principled person. 2 years ago, I was offered a chance to live and work in Nepal. I jumped at the opportunity, in large part because I grew up hearing stories of Mike and my dad's fabled trip to Nepal in 1979, when they were my age. There was a few photos up there of that. The trip changed both of their lives in different ways and sparked Mike's love for South Asia, a part of the world I now feel lucky to call home. I owe a lot to Mike, as well as the rest of my Marqusee family, for instilling in me from a very young age a love of travel, food, politics, and art, something I think we all share. A few weeks after he passed away, I spent some time looking through old emails from him. I rediscovered an email that my great-uncle Marty wrote him in 2012 with the whole family CC'd. Uncle Marty, I hope you're watching this from New York right now. I'm going to quote you. In response to an article of Mike's, Uncle Marty wrote, "I must wonder if my excited approbation is related to the fact that we are related. It is inappropriate pride, akin to my claiming Jonas Salk as a cousin. No apologies, I am proud to love and know you." Uncle Marty, I couldn't have said it better. I have always and will continue to shamelessly brag, to say, this man was my uncle, and he was great. No apologies. I am proud to have known and loved you. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much. I'd now like to welcome a great friend of Mike's to speak. Mike, as you know, had enormous knowledge and love for India and Pakistan, great knowledge of its culture, history, diversity, cricket, and everything else. And was a great friend of the next speaker, his Achin Vinayak. Achin is a peace campaigner in India, and we had a long discussion yesterday, and I discovered, to my interest, that he used to work in various gambling establishments in London, which is where he's able to work out the odds of getting rid of nuclear weapons, the odds of bringing peace to the whole globe, and is himself a very brave campaigner at a time when India has become a deeply nationalist, not to say xenophobic place, and it has become very difficult for people like Achin to speak up for a future that's free from nuclear weapons, a future of a very different nature in India. Achin has done that, does that, and will always do that. And it was great to meet him yesterday with CND and Stop the War, and it's fantastic that he's come here today, especially from India, just to speak in memory of his great friend Mike Marqusee. Please welcome Achin Vinayak.
I just wanted to say that Mike had 3 homes in the States, here in Britain, and also in India. India was central to him, and I and my family are immensely grateful for that, because he became central in our lives. When he passed away, we had a memorial meeting in India, and it's a testimony to the kind of impact that he had in India, that any number of people came, journalists, sports writers, politicos, activists from the feminist movement, from the anti-communal movement, and so on. And we sat together and, of course, celebrated him. I was in correspondence with Mike before I met him. I'd written my first book on India, and I'd sent it to Verso, and then they had sent it to Mike, who used to come to India and Nepal. And he made lots of corrections and suggestions, which I incorporated for the most part. And then I met him in Bombay in 1990, and we hit it off straight away. What was the reason? I was, in my 13 years in England, radicalized and shaped by the Black Power movement, the US and the British Black Power movement. And here was Mike, and we were talking about the Black Power movement and how he was influenced by the Black Power movement, about Stokely Carmichael and Malcolm X, and so on. And the anti-Vietnam War movement, of course, if you're here in the 60s and 70s, you had to be radicalized by that feminist movement, by the anti-Vietnam War. So we just connected so strongly. And both of us were basically, I suspect, shaped by our experiences in Britain. And that meant that we would talk incessantly about the British far left as well. But he was different from me in the sense that I was much more of a closed personality, whereas he was so politically and culturally open to so many others. In fact, more than any other person that I had met then or later, he had the most, of course, as all of you have said, the most incredible range of interests, indeed passions. How could anybody of a politically progressive bent, and you didn't have to be a Marxist or an anti-Stalinist radical lefty, that would help though, of course, not to warm to him as he could to others. My partner, Pamela, certainly did, as did both of us to Liz, his companion, who came with him on many of their trips to India, where they almost always stayed with us for some time before going off to other places and sites in India. This was important for us, not just because it nourished our friendship, but because it had a tremendous impact on our two sons. You know, all parents want to sort of imbue their children with progressive values and all. But we're a little bit scared that if we are too aggressive in our proselytizing, it's going to put them off. And Mike was a real godsend. Unlike me, who is now finding it rather difficult to take anybody under 40 that seriously, he did. And he could relate to young people. Aditya, my two sons. And it was tremendous. He listened to them, he joked with them, he informed them. And because he shared the enjoyment of the many forms of mass and popular culture, music, sport, film, TV serials, dance, he could grab their attention as he pointed out the values those products implicitly or explicitly upheld, distinguishing between the good and bad, and so on. And he would therefore promote really decent and humane moral principles. And this was very important for us because more than anybody else, including perhaps my partner Pamela and myself, he was responsible for inculcating in our two sons values, lifelong values and commitments that made us really proud. And for that, one alone is very grateful. The oldest son, Anish, is going to be talking later on here on Skype. Our younger son, Samar, he flew the coop at the age of 17. He went to South India away from the home to pursue his medical studies and so on. So he saw much less of Mike than the rest of us. But when Mike passed away, I just want to read out a small letter that he wrote when Mike passed away. He wrote in the form of a small letter. Dear Mike, uncle, I choked back tears when I tried to describe my fondest memories of you. Memories steeped in love, steeped in happiness. I remember playing cricket outside our driveway, you bowling left-arm googlies. I remember watching the World Cup match at the Kotla cricket ground together. I remember you counseling those horrible fans who were inanely shouting anti-Pakistani jeers, thereby showing two impressionable kids the importance of values, the importance of politics, and the importance of causes. Your ability to intertwine these with music, art, and literature lit up every conversation. Your writings, thoughts, and musings will continue to do so. I'm immensely fortunate to have a treasure trove of these memories, memories I can always dive into and remind myself of your integrity, goodness, and warmth, mine to cherish, mine to keep. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. So it was not just you, youngster, I think you just talked here. You had that impact on others here. Let me just say also about cricket. That was the thing that perhaps had a big impact because India, we are all crazy about cricket, as you know. And I had to accept, in fact, that when I read his book, he had a much more sensible, historical, and materialist explanation for why cricket emerged in England. Because I had always taken a cultural approach, thinking that the reason why it emerged in England was that only the English could be so lazy as to invent a game that takes 5 days to play. And then on top of that, have an extra rest day. So, but here in India, he would be joining us with demonstration, other activities concerning, for example, the struggle, as I mentioned, against religious intolerances, against South Asian nuclearization, and so on. And then, of course, he would be able to discuss Bollywood and about the wonders of India, architectural ruins of Hampi, the growing passion for Carnatic music, and so on. And whatever delighted his senses, as Liz pointed out, this would be followed by serious studies so as to be able to understand and appreciate all